Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Elias Grampas, and on behalf of the European Parliament Intergroup on Climate Change, Biodiversity and Sustainable Development, I'm very happy to welcome you to today's event addressing how best to achieve sustainability in fisheries through research and innovation. Of course, this is a very timely discussion as sustainable fisheries is a topic of currently in the spotlight of key importance as well as the goal of many fisheries management measures throughout the globe. In the European Union, specifically, this is realized through the common fisheries policy, which calls for a balanced approach through the three pillars of sustainability, so the environmental, economic, and social, which I am sure we will be hearing more of later on during today's event. So just before we kick off our discussion, I would like to take the opportunity to thank hosting MEP, Ms. Maria da Graça Carvalho, Vice Chair of PESH Committee, the European Parliament Committee on Fisheries, a member of EPP Group and co-chair under the umbrella of the Intergroup of the Working Group specifically focusing on ocean governance. So thanks very much to Ms. Carvalho for hosting this event, but also to colleagues from Inomar for kindly co-organizing and supporting the organization of this event. Just before passing the floor to Ms. Carvalho for her opening remarks, I would like to highlight that we're equally very interested in hearing from our audience as well. So turning to participants, I would like to invite you to send us your questions during the event. For that, you can do the Q&As option. You can use the specific box from the platform, choosing the all panelists option. Just within your question, please make sure to also note the speaker to whom your question is best addressed so that on behalf of the Secretariat of the Intergroup, we can facilitate a fruitful discussion to follow. So without further ado, on this note, I would like to thank you all once again for joining us today. And Ms. Carvalho, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Elias. I'm very proud to host this webinar today. And I thank the Climate Change, Biodiversity and Sustainable Development Intergroup for the key support provided to the organization. Actually, they did the whole organization of this event. Sustainability means providing the best possible living conditions for current generations without jeopardizing the opportunities for the future generations. And throughout our recent history, we know that growth and economic growth has unfortunately always been associated with the increased use of available resources. Today we consume too much, and the way we do it has an impact that we cannot ignore. And this is true for a lot of sectors, but in the fisheries sector is probably even more evident than in other sectors. The European Ecological Pact and more extensive the European Green Pact are meant to create the conditions to achieve a better balance and to cut the link between growth and resource use and guarantee that no one is left behind. During my career, both in academic career and political career, I have been working to try to help to give my small contribution to do this cut between well-being, economic growth, and well-being on the population in general, and the impact on the environment and on the planet in general. And I'm very convinced that this it's only possible through science and new technologies, or at least these two will have a tremendous impact on this to cut this, decouple these two phenomena. So in my remarks today, I want to talk about 3 points. The first one is the importance of scientific knowledge, the scientific evidence for the policy making, for the decisions. And the second point is the role that the new technologies like the use of big data, AI, all the robotics, space technology can play to get more sustainable fishing. We know that some are already using this, but not as is not a generalized issue and is expensive. So because of that, my third point is how the need to provide the means to make this change. So the first topic, our oceans and seas have enormous potential, but they are under pressure, and so are the marine fish stocks. As you know, and it was said in the European Parliament Committee on Fisheries, which I'm the vice chair, one of my priorities, and I'm recently member of the fishery committees and the vice chair only after the Brexit and the some rearrangement, I became in this committee because my typical committees are committees more related to technologies and research, ITRE, AI, the committee, the INCO, where I deal a lot with digital. So, but I accept, and I'm very pleased to be on this committee, as I think that my background on promoting research, science, evidence-based policy making can make a difference. And this is my main role or my main objective in this in my work in fishery committee is to put this science-based evidence and introduce new technologies in all the reports that I can. So I'm there with this lens, with this perspective. And I probably some of you know one opinion that was prepared by the science advice mechanism was one of my last works when I was in the commission before I became second time member of the European Parliament. That is food from the oceans, that I was in DGRTB helping to putting together. The responsibility is from the principal scientific advisors that are personalities external to the commission, but people in the commission had a big role to put the evidence together. And that is the kind of work that I think that is very important to be the basis of the fishery committees. So to have the scientific base to gather the best available knowledge that we have in the field to be able to make decisions. So very much pushing in all my career also for this science advice, the science-based policy making, and that is, I will continue with this in the fishery committee. In my role as a rapporteur in the ITRE on the strategic innovation agenda of the ITRE committee for the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, that is one part of Horizon Europe that covers the triangle of knowledge. Is the only part of Horizon Europe that has higher education, research and innovation, and is organized in different areas. And as a rapporteur, I managed to include it, a new area. There are 8 areas, but I managed to include marine, a water kick is called, but where oceans will be a very important part of this kick. As I have done when I was rapporteur or Horizon 2020, that I have introduced the oceans as a key area. There was already ocean research in FP7, but scattered, some in the environment, some in the energy, but known a big area called marine and maritime resources or ocean research, and we managed for the first time in Horizon 2020 to do that. And I manage now also in the EIT. It's very important that we promote this research, but that we also make this research available in a fashion that is understood by the policymakers. We make these results of the research available for the policymakers so that the decisions are science-based. So this is my first my first message to you. Second point, and quite along the same line, I want to stress the importance of the digital technologies and the whole new technologies. I think that the fisheries sector and the sustainability of the oceans can improve a lot if we manage to gather, for example, data. If we manage to gather all the data that are necessary, transmit that data, store the data, use the data. And these are not anymore rocket science. They are things that are well known, just need to be implemented. Also, monitoring, more advanced monitoring technology, robotics, sensors, and analyzing data from the space. All that will be incredible help to have our system, our fisheries more sustainable, because I'm of the opinion that fish is a very important source of protein. I'm not of the opinion that we should stop the fishery sectors, but we need to do it in a way that is sustainable, that we protect the species, and we have knowledge from one side and technologies from the other side that will enable us to do that. We have large computing power, and we have now a network of high-performance computing sponsored by, was also a public-private partnership that I was rapporteur. We are going to buy, Europe is going to buy 8 supercomputers that can be used all over the European territory, exactly to be used for Green Deal, for sustainability. So these applications, we have computer power, we have more user-friendly satellite-based application, capabilities, algorithms that analyze big data, improvements in digital cameras, blockchain systems to improve the traceability, and so on. All this is, I could say, well known, at least for the specialists. So we have to combine and use these technology developments in favor of our of the sustainability of our planet. Machine vision, machine learning, artificial intelligence. We can build smart systems for the fishery sectors and improve the sustainability while we maintain the efficiency. And there is another advantage of this. We will be able to attract much more qualified young people to the sector. Now, at least in my own country, the sector is very much a traditional sector for people of older generation. Fortunately, we have exceptions. We have quite people with MSCs, PhDs that are now becoming fishermen already with this perspective, but this new perspective will help to attract much more, to make it a modern a sector of the future. A third crucial aspect, that's my last point, is that we need budget to do all this. But fortunately, we are in the next at least 5 years, but seven is the EU budget, 4, 5 is the recovery plan. We will have an immense amount of budget that Europe never had in the past access to such a budget. Is a question of priorities and the good use of this budget. And I think that the best use that we can do to the recovery plan and to the EU budget is exactly to apply new technology and give capacity to the people to apply this new technology to the different sectors and the sectors that are so important for our well-being: fisheries, agriculture, health. So all these advancements in science and in technology are there to be used. And now we need to use. And now we have this budget that will allow us to equip our ships, to equip our factories, to equip and to give capacity to people so that the sectors are much more sustainable. But we know the tendency of the member states and the countries to use this sometimes is much in some projects that are easier to execute, that usually are big constructions that are very visible to the voters and easy to execute. Sometimes these technologies are more complex to acquire and not so, at the first sight, not so visible. So it's up to the civil society to put pressure in the governments, the national, regional governments, local governments that play a very important, to make sure that the money is well used, is well applied. And there is one very important element at least the part of the recovery plan is debt and needs to be paid by the young generations. It's going to be paid back. So at least what we need to do is to do projects that are in favor of the sustainability of our planet, that we live a planet that is sustainable, that they have a good environment to live with. The minimum that policymakers of today need to do when they apply these budgets. But I'm really afraid because I see many, the first decisions in many member states already, and another airport, another road, another roundabout. They start immediately with this kind of constructions that are more visible to the voters in certain way. So thank you very much. And I count also in all of you to put this pressure so that we manage to transform the fishery sectors, but also together with other sectors with the help of knowledge and more technology to sustainable sectors of the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carvalho, for your key commitment and your excellent work in the European Parliament with regards to addressing also the vision of today's event. Thank you also for setting the scene regarding the content of today's discussion to follow, inter alia underlining the timely nature of our discussion today, but also the key role of scientific evidence. Of course, we need more well-informed science-based policy making. This is what, on behalf of the Secretariat of the Intergroup, we have been pushing for, and it's in the core of our work. So thank you very much for highlighting that. Ms. Carvalho also mentioned the role of technology, digital technology and innovation through the use of inter alia big data, AI, robotics, space technology, but also the need for better allocation of the existing budget to contribute to scientific advancements and further use of impactful projects, innovation and technology towards sustainability. So then, looking at practical examples, I would like to provide the floor to Mr. David Roisland and Mr. Oystein Norton, who will be sharing a presentation for the next 15 minutes to follow. Mr. Roisland is the COO, Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of Innomar. Innomar is, of course, a technology development company with a specific focus on the marine industry, fisheries and aquaculture, and its main goals are to improve the existing technology to achieve better resource management and responsible fishing, And then Mr. Orten is the captain and co-owner of the Norwegian fishing boat Ragnhild Christina, which operates under his company Orten Fisheries Skap. I hope I pronounced it well enough. And well, importantly enough, back in 2020, the crew was awarded the Best Fisherman of the Year award. So looking forward to hearing more from you on best practices.
Okay, thank you for the very nice introduction, Elias. And thank you very much to Ms. Carvalho for inviting us to participate here and to present what we're doing. I will now share my screen and go through what Innomar is all about and how we can contribute to a healthier ocean. Can you all see my screen now? Please confirm.
Yes, great. We can see.
So Innomar Ocean Technology is all about a digital ocean and sustainable fisheries. We were founded in 2016 and have always had the main focus on interconnectivity in the ocean and also on improving economics for fisheries and maintaining sustainability. So to summarize that, our goal is to make a digitalized and healthy ocean through the introduction of new solutions for responsible fishing and optimized resource management. And what we now have is a new tool and system that will be complementary to existing technology and could gradually take a bigger role in today's fisheries. And it will give both fishermen a means to monitor and control their use of equipment and get access to valuable data from the ocean that can improve their operations. But it will also facilitate for regulators, researchers, and other stakeholders to get access to valuable ocean data and to also monitor and control the fisheries to ensure best practices in sustainable fisheries. I would like to point out that we were very appreciated support from the European Innovation Accelerator, and in 2020 we were awarded the European Union Green Deal to develop this technology that I am going to present to you here today. So we're a European company with offices in Norway and Canada, and we also work very closely when it comes to blockchain solutions with a very close Portuguese partner of ours. So we are all about sustainability and life below water. So the big challenge that really started sparking our ideas for what we're going to present to you is exactly the fisheries and how traditional it has been. Most fishers out there, they fish as their grandparents did, you know, with traditional equipment and methods that's been passed down through generations, but not necessarily with the use of IoT and data solutions that today's technological environment actually allows us to implement so that we can ensure best practices. So just to illustrate, for the ocean-going fleet, there's a lot of political decisions going on in trying to reduce, for example, sea bottom trawling, because evidence shows that this can, in some instances, endanger sea habitats for short-term economic gains. When it comes to the coastal fleet, you know, the most used equipment is gill nets, and gill nets is a great source of bycatch, and it also does not give the top quality of the fish, and hence not the best value to the consumer or to the fisherman that collects the fish. So according to the FAO, the UN organization, all of wild caught fish, based on any sort of equipment used today, when you get up a catch, let's say you target one species, 40% of what you get up is unwanted species or bycatch. And often these species, unfortunately, perish during that process due to the way it has been caught. And in average, each fisherman loses about 20% of their fishing gear each year in the ocean due to not being able to trace or retrieve the gear. And the bioresult from that is that ghost fishing is ghost fishing. So that's basically lost, abandoned gear that floats around or is stuck on the seabed, but continues to fish without being retrieved. And each year that kills about 650,000 tons of mammals, whales and dolphins, etc. And unoptimized fisheries also contribute to a lot of CO2, and about 70% of ocean plastics are lost fishing. So our solution to tackle this problem is what we have been financed by the European Innovation Accelerator. It's the InnoCatch system under the project Sunfish in particular. It consists of 4 elements. Our digital web platform that can communicate with 4G, 5G, or satellite, and can give the fisherman, the user, a very good tool to optimize fisheries and also have full control of the equipment and monitoring its operations in the ocean. But it can also give regulators access to all equipment that's attached to this platform, as an example, so that they can monitor and work closely with the industry to secure a healthy ocean. So this platform communicates with our own smart buoys that allows us to do exactly what I just mentioned, to trace the equipment and to keep track of who owns it, when it was deployed, if it has been retrieved, and we can also communicate with the users. For example, say it's about time that you go and retrieve it, or you should report lost equipment or even the catch. We also have a wireless biomass monitor that we can attach on top of, for example, a fishing trap that we've developed, and that could monitor in real time the content of the fishing trap. And we can see from either the boat or in the office or from the regulator side what sort of, if there is fish in the equipment or not. So you could actually then optimize and maybe even sell it before you go to the ocean or come back. And we have a smart fishing trap that is gentle to the seabed, that minimizes bycatch, that allows the fish to live until you get it. And it will also facilitate so that if there is bycatch, unwanted species, you could put it back out in the ocean again, and it will continue to live on, thus contributing to better ocean habitats. And here's just an illustration of our software, how it uses, and our buoy. And you can be notified if the equipment moves, if it has been lost, what is the last position, where's the new position of the buoy, and exactly this can we also share with regulators so that they can have full control of the equipment in the ocean, thus helping to work together with the industry to minimize plastic pollution from fishing gear, but also to automate reporting practices. Attached to blockchain, this could actually also, with what I will show you afterwards, this is something we are actually working on. It is to automatically trace the species you get on board and then report into the industry sort of where it was caught, by whom, and by what sort of method, ensuring full traceability in the food chain. So here's from our traps. So to the left, you will see a picture that was done with a transducer. It was sent wirelessly up to the surface, and it allows the fishers to see before they go to the location the amount of catch they have gotten. And to the right, you see it's above the seabed with a living fish and top quality. And the fishermen can talk more about this afterwards. So as a company, this new technology could be, well, is groundbreaking because it allows us, with the traceability, to keep track of the fishing gear and minimize its loss, because we can find it. Where is it? And even if the buoy has lost the connection to the fishing gear, we can see on the software where it was lost, so we can go back and retrieve it, and thus reduce ghost fishing. And using traps will reduce bycatch and optimize fishing operations with the software will reduce emission. And because we have full control of the fishing gear in the ocean, we reduce ocean plastic pollution. And as you can see here, I have some numbers. That's our 5-year goals. So within 5 years, based on our sales estimates of this technology as an SME, we will save 720 individual fishers from perishing due to bycatch. We can reduce ghost fishing and save about 2,000 mammals, such as whales and dolphins, that would otherwise go into lost gear, such as lost gill nets. We can reduce emissions by 173,000 tons of fuel and reduce ocean plastic pollution by 12,000 tons. That's our impact goals. And now I would like to pass on the word to Captain Øystein Orten, who, as Elias mentioned, was awarded Quality Fisher of the Year in 2020. This is his boat, Ragnhild Christina, using mainly longline and gill nets, and he's now using our new technology to optimize fishing with smart buoys and sensors and see really new opportunities with the use of fishing trap. So thank you for your time, everyone. And Øystein, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David. And thank you to Ms. Carvalho for having me speak here. We've been working with Innomar, both on the basis of their development of traps as a sustainable and profitable way of fishing, and in regards to their tracking buoys. And we find both line of products to be very interesting. As David said, in our segment of coastal fishing, most of the smaller and mid-sized boats use gill nets for fishing. The gill nets are effective, but the environmental imprint they leave behind cannot be ignored. By developing traps that can fish the different species that we now fish with gill nets, with an acceptable enough catch rate, we can reduce both plastics in the sea, the imprint on the seabed, and bycatch of unwanted species or too small individuals of the species we do want by a great deal. Fishing with traps, you can also directly go for individual species by manipulating both the pots and the bait you use. And you can go for fish stock that is underutilized in areas. Such species in Norway would mostly be ling and tusk. And this opens up the door for more activity, both in the fjords and the inner coastline, as well as for bigger boats in the outer edge of the continental bays, where these fish species are quite numerous and are now primarily being fished with gill nets. So we have been and are going to continue to test the traps from Innomar as we develop them further, and we see very good possibilities in developing these fisheries. These species are now, as I said, almost exclusively caught on gill nets and with longline. With gill nets, you have the negative part where, as David said, the quality of the fish, it will be greatly diminished. And this will result in a lower first-hand price, and you will have less return on investment. With the long line, you will have a much higher quality, higher first-hand prices, but again, the cost of operating this gear makes it actually often less profitable than the gill net fishing, even though you can get a lot higher first-hand prices. But with using pots instead of these fishing equipments, you can have a lot less cost during fishing. So we can optimize the quality to have quality equal to or even better than that from the long line, and as well having less expenses than with the gill nets. And that will combine into a fishing where you have quality with profits, and you can also have a much less of a burden on the environment. And I think that's really the way we have to go in the fishing industry now. For myself, as a fishing boat captain and the owner, and I do fish a lot with gill nets, so it would be easy for me to just say that we need to fish with gill nets. That's what we've been doing for 100 years. But I can see the imprint that it does. I can see all the plastic the gill nets loses when we use them. I can see all the bycatch we get, and we need to start doing something with this now. So thank you, and back to you, Elias.
Thank you very much, both to David and Oystein for their presentation of new solutions on sustainable fishing and optimized resource management. I think at this stage of the event, we're all very much looking forward to also some reactions from our excellent set of 6 more speakers to follow. So seeing that we're running perhaps 12 minutes, just late in our agenda of the day, quite seamlessly, I would like to transition to our next speaker, who is Mr. Thomas Gugler. Thomas Gugler is the president of the World Association of Chef Societies, a certified star chef. Mr. Gugler is running a very successful organization with 12 million professional chefs worldwide, and just inter alia holds numerous professorships and teacher positions at global universities. So, Mr. Gugler, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Elias, thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to have you all today on this, I also would say, very informative and very important webinar, which is conducted. For me, seeing it from the side, from the eyesight of a professional and for the hospitality industry, we all always looking as chefs for good quality-driven products, and this sometimes despite of a cost and the story behind it, which I believe is totally wrong. We as World Chefs have been actually created 1928, it has been founded, and since this time for us it is so important actually in looking into the development of right practices in all aspects, how to feed the world population in the right directions. I had a great opportunity living all around the world. I visited 189 countries, and I see the different practices of fishing all around the globe, which in some areas, which is the rural areas, people are still working with very simple gears, and as you go further to the more industrialized areas, it's get more, I would say, aggressive in fishing, and this is, in my opinion, in our opinion, not the right direction. What I have seen, for example, from Innomar, it is something which will help us to sustain and definitely the world population in the future in a more clever, more intelligent, and definitely in a more proper and appropriate way. Chefs are looking always for a quality product, and the quality of a fish definitely comes always out due to the catching method. It's like in all the industry which we are working on, animals get stressed. Animals have a very high output of adrenaline. And this definitely is a very, very big impact in the final product which is served to our guests and to our clients. People always want to have the best, despite of knowing how, where, and how it's done. Yes, price is a very, very big factor which plays in the mind of the end consumers. But we, as we have seen now due to COVID, a simple man-made disease, which is exactly the same direction which we are going. Human beings, as the most intelligent race on the planet, forgot sometimes to see very, very deep how our grandparents and great-grandparents has been harvesting, has been working hard for a better future, for a better world, as given to us when we was children. And I believe like the method which is used, like for example, just displayed with Innomar, has a lot of positive aspects towards quality, towards sustainability, and towards making the world a better place. Fish without stress, no adrenaline output, and definitely they are much more relaxed and still living in their free environment. And I think this is one of the key elements. As I believe a trace record is absolutely necessary to be broadcasted and to be implemented, because we have this in the animal world. If you go to cattle raising, if you go to whatever raising in the world of animals, you have a trace record which has been started in the US and in Canada, and it has been gone all around the world. And I believe it's an absolutely must. Free caught fish has to be displayed in the right way and has to be really presented for its quality and for its sustainability fishing method which has been used. The second aspect, which I believe is so important, is definitely to focus on a local market, local fishermen, which we had before. They had an average of a fresh fish in the market of about 25%. Now it went down to 10% because people are going to the mega big trawlers, which are going on the world oceans and catching the fish for them. So the local market definitely has suffered a lot. And I think if we as chefs and if we as culinarians focusing on the local regional area where I can sell my fish, directly to the customer, it's a fantastic selling point. And additionally to this, I believe it is absolutely necessary to support the local industry. As we all know, and as we heard before, yes, there are seasonal fishes like ling, like task, etc., which are in a perfect way and condition. It's a very stable resource, but we as culinarians, as end consumers, are not taking these kind of fishes because we know too little about them. So I believe it is very, very important for the industry to support this kind of fishes, this kind of fishing industry, and to make this kind of fishes popular. If you go back to the 1930, 1940, one of the cheapest fish in the market was a mackerel. Go into the fish shops now and into the markets now. Mackerel is one of the most expensive fishes now, which is casually catched because it has been overfished, it hasn't been traced properly, and now this is what we as human beings are doing. I 100% believe in it, and the entire organization as World Chefs believe into a better future, make the world a better place, and believe in the power of the white jacket. And why I'm saying that is so important. We have the three columns which are so important for us to focus on. It's the environmental aspect. That's number one in all the regions around the world in the sea. As we always seen and see, mammals, as you said, and as we heard, are dying for nothing. So many bycatch is thrown into the sea or used for something which is, for me, totally underrated, because it is not only to make animal food out of it. I believe this is totally wrong, because if this fish with the right attention could have a chance to grow bigger and bigger, this will sustain our feeding habits and definitely to feed the world population in the coming centuries. And that's, for me, is one of the key elements. We as World Chefs definitely have World Chefs Without Border, which is a charity-driven organization. We are looking for the needy around the world. And you would not believe, and that the people which are simply living in industrialized countries don't see how many people are starving of hunger. And we, if we are taking care about especially this kind of fishing for the future, it will help, as I said, to make the world a better place, and definitely to have more resources, proper resources, quality-driven resources, which can feed the world population for a long time. The advantage of these traps, as I said, definitely, and as I see it, is the bycatch. You don't have any more bycatch. And these traps and this way of fishing can be completely tailor-made for the fish types you are talking about. It could be specifically made for halibut, it could be made for cod, it could be made for mackerel, and all the different species. But on us from the culinary world, it is so important that chefs from around the globe, we have to definitely support sustainable fishing methods, to emphasize on quality-driven products, to support the local fishermen, and definitely to make sure that these underrated quality-driven fishes, which are not that well known to the society, has to have its platform, has to have its presence on the daily menu, on the staples of the restaurants from all around the world. And I believe the future has one very, very great advantage. If we as human beings reduce waste, not only plastic waste and side effect waste, which is produced out of the industry, I talk about livable waste, which can be, with the right treatments, well grown and well treated, so that we are making actually our nature become our friend again. Because human beings sometimes are not taking the attention to where they live in. And our future can only be happy, healthy, and great if we as human beings taking care about that. And I want to say thank you very, very much to all of you. As we know, fish is one of the most important proteins. The oceans are so big, and we as human beings not even know much about the oceans. But if we are focusing on that, I think in a joint venture, in a joint operation where we put hands together, all the people from the different industries, and focusing on that, that will make the difference. And in the future, I want to see underrated fishes like tasks, for example, and other things like ling in a seasonal way brought to our tables, and to make them the heroes for the coming centuries. And I want to say thank you that you gave me the time to talk to you. Chefs are here to feed, to make people happy. And I believe this should be the future goal for us. Make our world a better place and feed our human beings in the right way. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Googler, for your key input and your vision looking ahead. Our next speaker in today's agenda is Mr. Xavier van der Becken, who is the CEO of Frezenbal, a company specialized in the packaging of fresh fish. Mr. van der Becken has previously worked and gained experience through different roles in supply chain management. So, Mr. van der Becken, we're very happy to welcome you to today's discussion, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I just share my screen. Is it okay for everyone? Do you see my screen?
Yes, very well.
Okay. So thank you very much for welcoming me today. I'm very stressed to be here because just speak after a president. So thank you for having me. I'm 34 years old, and I'm running a company started by my parents in '85 in fish. And our main strength is that we don't know anything about fish because my parents are farmer. They used to be farmer on the land, so they try to bring some stuff like from the farming industry into our industry, and it's very interesting because sustainability is driving us since early '90s, because sustainability is also profit, and I will explain you in my presentation. So Frezenbal is a company based in France. We have 2 factories. We are processing 42,000 tons of fish transformed and processed in France. Turnover is 280 million euros. We are buying in 16 different areas all over the world. I will say Europe, fresh fish from Iceland, Norway, Denmark, UK, and also French boat. And we are selling in 3 different channels: retail, full service, and industry. We are driven by people. We are now 650 persons. Indirect jobs 900. 37 years old of average age, and 52% of our workers are women, and the rest are male. So we are like challenging the industry in France with our figures, because it's not like that in the fish industry in France, but we are happy that we are bringing a new way of thinking in the French fish industry. Sustainability drives us since a long time. The easy way of making sustainability, of course, is to use label product and labelization. We were the first of making organic salmon in early 2000, sorry. First of making label rouge in 1999. Since 2016, we are providing all of our fish coming from farming is ASC, and 100% of my fish now is MSC when it's coming from fishing. We are offering salmon from different species. I will go very quick. And of course, whitefish. Whitefish, I like to remind that to all of my customers and all to my workers that whitefish is the last, I would say, savage species that you can find in the retail. Everything now is coming out of farming. I speak about fish, but also when you speak about beef and pork and everything is farming. Whitefish, when you speak about cod, says, redfish, tusk, monkfish, it's wild. So we have to take care of what we are fishing. We are doing everything the customer wants out of the fish. So our main business is to make pinball-free fillet and to cut into portions and to pack it into individual trays or into big trays for the catering on HoReCa service. We are going back to the coastal fishing in the French. I speak 10 years ago, it was 25% of my supply. Last year, it was just 3% of my supply. And we want to develop it again because sustainability is also work with local people, and it's good to work with big fishing boats that can go out 20 days and go back, but then you lose shelf life because when the fish has already 20 days, you have to pack it, and to put a shelf life, you just put 5 days of shelf life. When you have a local fisherman who can fish within 12 hours, give you the fish on the same day on your factory, you can pack it the day after, you can put 10 or 12 days of shelf life because the fish is what we call fresh. It's exactly the same. Sustainability is also yield because when you take fish coming from a trawler and you have a 10 days of fishing, the fish is very smooth and you have an awful yield on the factory. When you have a long line fish or a trapped fish, the yield is amazing because the fish is very firm and I can make beautiful fillet and I can sell more to the customer and less to the byproduct. And this is also sustainability. Sustainability happens in the sea, but also in the factory. So that is what also I want to point today, is that with beautiful fish trapped and I would say when you take care of it, you have better yield, and better yield make better profit for everyone and less wasted for the pet food, if I can say so. We like animals, but it's better to feed humans. So this is the part of our local boat. It's nothing compared to what we do. It's 900 tons last year, but we are going to develop it again and again, and this is coming with also win-win agreement and contract we do with fishermen. This is one part of our main customers we have in France. Some well-known customers like Leclerc, Cora, Carrefour. The things are changing a lot in France, and sustainability is now customer-driven. The customer asks us how sustainability you are. What can you provide me? Okay, you have ASC, you have MSC fish, but what else? What can you say to me? And you speak in the presentation before about blockchain. I have a big customer called Carrefour now. He wants blockchain, so I provide to him blockchain for salmon industry. It's easy, it's farm, so I know where it's catch, I know when the eggs open and everything. But if I can do blockchain on wild fish, it will be the first of doing it, and the customer like it because now we have to tell a story. This fish come from this fisherman. He was catch or trapped in this place, and we have to give a story to the customer. Otherwise, it's standardization, and we cannot do sustainability with standardization. And then I wanted to show you that there is a place on the market for that. Because I am in front of the president of the chief, so I'm happy to say that now I'm supplying Le Nôtre. Le Nôtre is a very well-known French, I would say, catering organization, which are, for example, they are supplying the restaurant at the top of the Eiffel Tower. So it's a many star restaurant, and we use segmentation because we offer them a very exceptional salmon, which was not existing. We choose the best of the best. So there is segmentation possible in salmon, but also in whitefish. And I will explain you how, because with my marketing team, we developed this brand called Graal. It's mean, you know the Graal, what is it? So it's exceptional fish. And I'm sure we can do it for the retail with some individual packaging, and also for the HoReCa and catering services with fixed weight portions, pin bond free. So I put sales and code because this is the must have today, but we have to change this because we don't have diversity anymore. Our main product today is salmon, cod, and sales. But like we say before, if I can provide tusk, if I can provide ling, that will bring diversity. So we need the help of the chief to make the mindset change, and then we can provide that to the industry and to the HoReCa services. Because what we need as industrial is to have good fish with good yield, with shelf life, and big enough, then you can make portion on it, then we can deliver it to the chief. The chief is happy because he don't have to think about how many grams, because I make the grams for him. So 100 grams, 80 grams, whatever the chiefs want, and then he can make his beautiful plate. So we need to work hand by hand with fishermen, with the chief and the industry to provide the best fish, best quality, best yield, and best also profit for everyone. So this is a quick presentation. I hope it's clear for everyone. I'm not very confident and used to speak in front of so many people, but yeah, you have to understand that sustainability is also in the factory, and I will say yield is the best sustainability we can have as industrial. I love fishing, but I'm seasick, so I prefer to stand on the land and work with the best fishermen, and happy also to have the 2020 best fisherman.
Thank you very much, Mr. van der Becken, for your intervention and presentation today. Our next two speakers are going to bring to us the institutional point of view to the discussion. So at this stage, I'm very happy to introduce you to Ms. Elisabetta Balzi, who is the head of the Healthy Oceans and Seas Unit at the European Commission Research and Innovation Directorate General. Previously, Ms. Balzi also has been head of the Bioeconomy Unit at the European Commission Joint Research Center. So Ms. Balzi, I'm very happy to have you with us today. And I think we're all very much looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Ilias. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members. Mrs. Carvalho, many thanks for having organized this webinar today that I think is extremely strategic and extremely timely to discuss about the sustainability of fisheries. We know that sustainability of fisheries and of the ocean as a whole is key for the Green Deal, which is a key priority for the European Union. And there can be no Green Deal without a blue part. So many thanks for giving us the opportunity to present very briefly. I will just give you a flavor of what are the research and innovation activities that we are supporting in order to achieve sustainable fisheries, but I would say also in general, a healthy ocean and sustainable planet. And I would also like to give you a flavor of initiatives that we are supporting now, which go far beyond research and innovation. And I will mention lately what is our mission to restore ocean and waters by 2030. Starting from the research and innovation activities, you know that we are supporting research and innovation activities within our framework program for research and innovation. Starting from Horizon Europe, which is the current program, we have, starting now, it will run for the next 7 years, and we have a large range of opportunities to address the sustainability of the oceans. And for example, through what we called the societal challenge cluster 6, which is addressing food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and environment. but also our previous framework program, Horizon 2020, which ran between 2014 and 2020, has been broadly supporting the area of sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. Just to give you a flavor, we supported for about 140 million euros of projects in these areas, only in the societal challenge, which was addressing indeed marine and maritime sector and food, as Mrs. Carvalho mentioned, but also overall no less than about 300 million euros across the program. And to give you some example of projects that we supported, this is a project which was supporting the elimination of discards in the European fisheries, so to avoid unwanted catches, to handle unavoidable unwanted catches, and then to have studies of the effects on marine ecosystems. And we have also heard of an excellent project which was presented on the accelerator in the beginning of a webinar, and I think I would like to congratulate you for these really remarkable achievements. This is another example of projects that we supported. Mrs. Carvalho rightly highlighted the importance of technologies, and this is projects which were addressing smart fishing technologies in order to have an efficient and compliant fisheries, compliant with environmental requirements, so an environmental friendly fishing sector. And this is another example of projects that are running and that have been supported. And here it's the importance of setting the fisheries management in the ecosystem sector. So there is a very high importance towards the ecosystem and ecosystem-based fisheries management. And these projects are already delivering important operational approaches for the European ecosystem-based fisheries management to advise also policymakers. Currently, we also have call for proposals, the first call in Horizon Europe, and just to attract your attention on one which is currently open on innovative food from marine and freshwater ecosystems. So here we are aiming at exploring and testing solutions for more sustainable fishing aquaculture, for example, with low carbon approaches. We are aiming at zero carbon aquaculture, so there is a strong focus on diminishing the impact on climate, and so we are aiming at zero carbon aquaculture. Then improving the environmental impact of fisheries and aquaculture in general, and also addressing the issue of proximity between seafood production and consumption. Also, we heard very interesting presentations and which make the connection between the production and the consumption. And this is calls which are currently open. Then I would like now to pass actually to a very new and innovative strategic initiatives that we have launched, that have been launched just on the 29th of September, and those are the EU missions. So if you remember the Apollo 11, the moon shot, we are talking about other shot, including an ocean shot. And we have 5 missions that have been launched, one dedicated to adaptation to climate change, one on cancer, one on climate neutral and smart cities, another one on restoring our ocean and waters, and another one on soil deal for Europe. So what is the purpose of this mission? It's actually a very broad mobilization initiative to address this type of challenges. So there is those 5 examples, which are key challenges for our society, and to address them starting from a very important part from research and innovation, but going far beyond research and innovation and calling for a very, very broad mobilization across sectors, across systems. So this is why I think it's very important also to present this in this context, because I think you all have a very important role to play in these missions. So our specific missions towards restoring our ocean and waters. We are speaking about ocean and waters, I would like to clarify. So this includes all ocean and seas and inland waters, because we consider this as one system. They all influence each other, so what we call the hydrosphere. So the mission is addressing all the ocean, seas and waters as a system. And we have 3 main specific objectives. First of all, to protect and restore marine and freshwater ecosystems and their biodiversity. And these objectives, we have specific targets. So we intend by 2030 to protect a minimum of 30% of EU seas areas, to strictly protect at least 10% of EU sea areas, and to restore at least 25,000 kilometers of free-flowing rivers. So you see we are addressing both the inland waters and the seas and oceans with specific targets. Then the second objective is to prevent, eliminate pollution of our oceans, seas and waters. And we intend specifically to reduce by at least 50% plastic litter at sea, at least 30% of microplastics, which is an important part of plastic litter, and also to reduce at least by 50% other type of pollution, that is nutrient pollutions and chemical pesticides. And then our third objective is to make the blue economy carbon neutral. So you know that we have a maritime economy, which has a strong influence also on greenhouse gases emissions. So we have two specific targets: to eliminate greenhouse gases emissions from maritime activities, economic activities, and also to increase, to sequester those emissions that cannot be avoided. So we are aiming at what we call a net zero maritime emissions. And then the second very important target, which is also very relevant in this context, is that we intend to develop a zero carbon and low impact aquaculture. So this is very relevant, I think, in this context. And we also want to promote a circular, low carbon, multi-use of a marine space and water space. So then just the next slide. Okay. Next slide. Okay. So how are we going to do that? And then I wanted to still highlight one other important point. So we have those three objectives, but we have two, what we call the cross-cutting enablers. And here, one of them is very much relevant to what Mrs. Carvalho rightly mentioned. It's the importance of a knowledge and of a digital knowledge of the ocean and of the water. So we are going to support an whole set of activities towards a digital ocean and water knowledge system. And then the second type of activities, which are also key and where we are really calling for all your engagement from all of you, is the public mobilization and engagement. This will be key for the mission. So the mission is not only an issue of research innovation. Research innovation plays an important part, but it goes far beyond. We have to act all together at the local level, at regional level, at national level, and with all the stakeholders, like you have described, the SMEs have a very important role to play. The fishers communities also have an important role to play, and the citizens as a whole, and particularly the youth has a very important role to play. Now, how are we going to implement that? Very briefly, is through what we call lighthouses. So the lighthouses are the site actually where we expect the missions to be demonstrated, because missions are expected to be something very concrete, delivering very fast, a very ambitious program. So we have chosen to start from activities and initiatives which are already existing in order to amplify them and extend them across Europe. And we are proposing 4 lighthouses in 3 different sea basins and 1 river basin in Europe. So a Danube River Basin lighthouse, which is focusing on restoration, an Atlantic and an Arctic sea basins lighthouse, which is also focusing on restoration and particularly also resilience of our coast to issues connected to climate change, such as sea level rise. A third lighthouse is focusing on the Mediterranean Sea Basin, and here we have a focus on pollution. Now, even though each of the sea basins has a first focus on one objective, of course, we know that the 3 objectives are relevant for all the sea basins, and so all the lighthouses will have, they start from one sea basin with one objective, but then they are expected to expand, to connect with the other sea basins, and to reach the objectives across the whole of Europe. And then the last, but certainly not least, lighthouse is focused on the Baltic and North Sea with a focus on decarbonization, including zero carbon aquaculture that we have described. So this is just a detail of those lighthouses. But again, what I would like to stress that those lighthouses, it's really a matter for all of us. So we all need to contribute at all levels. So even though research innovation will play a key role, it's certainly not the only one. We have also some key events, but of course the mobilization goes far beyond the events, but I wanted to mention them because certainly your involvement and engagement also will be important at this level. The One Ocean Summit, which is announced by President Macron under the French presidency, will take place in Brest on the 11th and 12th of February. And there we will really, well, of course, there will be very high level announcement by the heads of states, and we hope the mission will have a high visibility, expected to have a high visibility. And at this occasion, we hope to launch the first lighthouses, to announce probably the Mediterranean lighthouse, shortly after the Atlantic and the Arctic lighthouse. And then also under the next presidency, the Czech presidency next year in the second semester, we are also looking forward to strong collaboration and probably to launch the next lighthouses such as the Danube one. But I would say my message here is again is really get involved, because those missions have a very strong, very ambitious objectives, and they are really meant to work all together towards reaching this objective. We certainly cannot do it alone. So we are looking forward to your collaboration in this respect. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Balzi, for your work, for presenting us your work within DGRTD, but also for the concrete solutions on current challenges via the specific EU mission objectives and targets. Our next speaker for today is Ms. Annette Harelman. On behalf of DG Mare. Well, we have heard from MEP Ms. Carvalho about the role of scientific data and data collection. So I'm very happy to introduce you to Ms. Harelman, who is the head of the C3 unit on scientific advice and data collection at the European Commission Directorate General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, DG Mare. Her unit contributes to specifically ensure the provision of best available scientific advice for fisheries management under the CFP, so the Common Fisheries Policy, mentioned also at the beginning of our event. So Ms. Harelman, thank you very much for being with us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me first thank the organizers of this event for giving me the opportunity to participate to this intergroup event and to highlight the views of the European Commission, in my case in particular of DG Mare, on the role to be played by research and innovation to promote sustainable fisheries. It's a topic that is really very close to our heart in DG Mare. As you are probably all aware, the Common Fisheries Policy is a very science-based policy, and this can be illustrated by the fact that the basic regulation of the CFP mentions science almost 50 times, and it mentions the term best available scientific advice 15 times. And very much in line with this ambition, the EU commits also significant resources to support the delivery of scientific advice on which it relies in its decision-making process, and for delivering the data that is important because it is really the basis for any scientific advice. And this is true at EU level, but it is also true beyond that at the international level, where the EU provides unmatched contributions to support the scientific process. I would like to talk a little bit about the structures that are in place to actually support this best scientific advice. First of all, we rely on and work with a core group of independent advice providers. This includes the International Council for the Exploration of the Seas, ICES, and also the Scientific, Technical and Economic Committee for Fisheries, STCF, that's a Commission expert group. In addition to that, we tap also into additional independent expertise through the use of framework contracts under which we can run scientific studies and also provide direct scientific support to the European Commission, for example, during international negotiations. The EU is also the main provider of financial contributions to support the work of international organizations, or the scientific part of the work of international organizations such as RFMOs, the regional fisheries management organizations. These work streams that I've been talking about are supported. We have already heard from various speakers before me about the importance of course, also giving financial support to these efforts. These are supported through the European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund, the MFAF. I should also stress that we get additional support commission internally from the Joint Research Center and also from the agency SINEA for aspects of study management. I would also like to highlight that we are very conscious of using the synergies that are there with other instruments, such as the more fundamental and longer term research options that are provided under the EU Research and Innovation Framework programs that were just presented by my colleague Elisabetta. So DG Mare also works with DG RTD here to make contributions to bring research on fisheries topics and wider blue economy topics into the research framework programs of the European Commission. I have mentioned already the need for reliable and complete data to support the scientific process. This is really crucial. So we cannot expect to have good science without having good data. We have in place in the European Union the data collection framework, the DCF, which provides the basis for harmonized data collection by the EU member states. Again, this is something that is co-financed by the MFAF. And it's also important to stress that member states also coordinate this data collection between each other and with each other through the so-called regional coordination groups for data collection. And we, as DG Mare, we follow up very closely with the member states on the implementation of the data collection obligations. That brings me to the new challenges. It has already been mentioned a lot in this program, and of course it's very important. The current priorities of the European Commission provide a lot of challenges, but of course also associated opportunities in relation to the sustainable management of fisheries and the science that is required to support this objective. There are challenges in particular, I would say, with respect to ensuring the coherence and the contribution of the fisheries policy to the Green Deal objectives, in particular the biodiversity strategy, but also the farm to fork strategy for sure. In particular, the question is going to be and is already how will we achieve the much more ambitious goals in relation to the conservation and the restoration of marine biodiversity. In the context of the Green Deal, it is clear that there will be and there already are increasing demands on integrating ecosystem considerations in fisheries management objectives. This means going beyond the, I would say, relatively simple or simplistic approach of managing single stocks and embracing a more holistic view of ecosystems and on how to manage ecosystems. It's important to stress that the ecosystem-based management is already an integral part enshrined in the CFP. The challenge that I see from the scientific advice perspective is really very clearly how to develop the science to make this more operational as a concrete tool for fisheries management. It's clear that there still is a lot to develop in the science, but I think one thing that is even more clear and that is already very obvious from what I said before is that in the future we are going to need an even bigger amount of data to guide our decisions. This is one of the key challenges we really need to address to continue with a high quality scientific advice as the basis for the CFP. We will need more data and also on a much wider range of parameters than what we are currently requiring to conduct stock assessments in the main fisheries we are responsible for. And the good news is, and again, something that clearly came out of this program already, that there are rapid technological progresses that can help us in meeting these objectives, and hopefully also to do this in a cost-effective way. Let me provide just a few examples, relatively simple examples on how technological process can support fisheries management. One thing is that in the context of the ongoing negotiations about the control regulations, you are certainly familiar with the remote electronic monitoring systems, which present a range of options to address some control requirements. But what is also very interesting is that REMs can support us on much more than control. They are also increasingly considered as a viable complement and a possible alternative to scientific programs, to scientific observer programs on board of fishing vessels, which are of course very cost intensive. And there is already ongoing work in a number of organizations where the EU is a party to establish common standards to use REM as a substitute or complement to existing observer programs and schemes. A core challenge, of course, is also related to the collection, or a core challenge related to the collection of large amounts of data is also our limited capacity to process the information collected and to do this without a human bias. So all the best data will not help us in fisheries management if we don't have the means to process it and to interpret it. I think that is very clear. So one exciting development is the possibility of using artificial intelligence to help us to meet these challenges. That becomes now a more and more realistic and achievable prospect, and we have already some trials being conducted to use artificial intelligence for the purposes of measuring catches of bluefin tuna, as another example. And then I would like to mention the potential for collecting more data through innovations related to fishing gear. We have been presented a really very valid example of that here today. This year, also for the first time, the ICAT Scientific Committee was able to use data collected from the echo sounders used by fishermen to detect the presence of tuna shoals under fishing aggregating devices. And this information allowed to improve stock assessments on tropical tuna and in turn our understanding of the stock status. And I'm stressing this example because it is really a very relevant example and very concrete of the potentially huge benefits of increasing cooperation between scientists, fishermen, and the private sector to collect information on fish stocks and ecosystems. And again, it connects very much to the presentation that we have had here today. Cooperation between different actors in the sector is going to be very important for the collection, for the processing of data, and for using it for scientific advice to benefit the ecosystems, the marine ecosystems. To close my intervention, I would like to say we are convinced in DG Mare that data and science will become an even more relevant ingredient for managing fisheries and in general marine ecosystems in the future. And the Commission priorities such as the Green Deal and the digital strategy go exactly in that direction. It's clear that there will be a lot of challenges to that, many things that we still need to address. But my point is that the common fisheries policy is already very well equipped to rise to these challenges. And that's because the confidence in and the use of and the reliance on science are already enshrined very deeply in the CFP and since a long time. Thank you very much again, and I'm looking forward to the further interventions and the discussions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Harelman, for presenting us on behalf of DG Mare the key challenges and opportunities ahead. Of course, scientific evidence and data collection are of paramount and, as you mentioned, also growing importance when it comes to achieving the goals of the CFP or the European Green Deal objectives. You mentioned inter alia farm to fork. and the biodiversity strategy. So thank you very much for highlighting those points. On this note, I would like to once again turn to our audience and invite you to send us your questions for our excellent set of panelists. For that, you can choose the all panelists option of the Q&As box at the right of your screen. And within your question, please make sure to also note the speaker to whom your question would be most addressed. Of course, looking forward to our interactive discussion to follow, I would like to also invite our next speakers to also, should you prefer, react to the previous interventions. I think we're all equally looking forward to an interactive and lively discussion. So on this note, I'm very happy to give the floor to Mr. Daniel De Voces Onandi, who is the Managing Director of Europesh, which is, of course, the representative body for fishermen in the European Union, representing around 45,000 vessels and more than 80,000 fishermen and counting 16 member organizations from 10 European countries. So, Mr. Voces, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Elias, and really appreciate the invitation from EBCD and the Intergroup, and obviously our host, Mr. Carvalho, and for selecting such a relevant topic nowadays, and now that we are discussing the COP26. I think it is clear that sustainable fishing is going hand in hand with research and innovation, and science is playing a fundamental role for the management and sustainable use of our oceans and seas. I think nobody's doubting that. And for us, all fishing fleets can be sustainable regardless of the size of the vessel. And I believe that it is important also to avoid demonizing any illegal fishing gear from our perspective. There are no good or bad fishing gears. It all depends on their use and the good regulation. And I think the common fisheries policy is proof of that. So when communicating sustainability and new initiatives, it is important to use the right data. And I have to say that I'm a little bit concerned with some of the statistics that were showed at the beginning of the event, which refer to high levels of bycatch and high levels of microplastics coming from fishing gears and the high emissions from the fishing vessels. But we need to look at the real figures. The levels of bycatch in the European Union and globally are much lower than showed. And if we look, for instance, at pelagic fisheries, it can go as low as 1 or 2%. But what is really important is look at the levels of discards, not the bycatch, because many of the bycatch species are actually landed and sold to the consumer. What we have to look at is the level of discards, and globally is 10%. And now that we have the landing obligation in the European Union, I'm pretty sure that it's even way lower. When it comes to macroplastics, I'm a little bit puzzled because I saw statistics globally and the European Union, and they talk about 10% of marine litter at sea comes from the fishing industry, and I think is way lower in the European Union. So I'm a little bit puzzled with those figures. And actually, I'm not sure about third countries, but in the European Union since 2010, we have the obligation to identify, mark, and retrieve the lost fishing gears. I know that it's impossible to fully comply with this because they get lost and etc. But we're doing our utmost. But blaming us for this is a little bit going too far. And concerning the level of emissions, we need to bear in mind that wild caught fish is by far the animal protein with the lowest carbon footprint. So I would like to clarify this before starting any reaction. Then concerning our contribution towards the achieving the environmental targets, I think it is clear that the fishermen, they are devoted to minimizing any possible impact on the environment. And we see that all the fleets across the European Union, they are indeed taking part in projects to improve energy and catching efficiency, traceability, product technology, and as well they are participating in voluntary ocean cleanup programs. For instance, our trawlers, bottom trawlers, they are the one collecting and landing the most litter from the sea. So we have really good examples out there showing innovation. Our fishermen, year after year, they are more selective. They're using less impacting fishing gears. They're reducing the level of bycatch, not only in non-commercial species, but also mammals and birds. And we have, for instance, a really good list produced by ICES in 2020 with most innovative fishing gears, many of them referring to bottom trolling. We also have really good examples with fishing aggregated devices. Most of the totality of that we are seeing in the European Union, they are non-entangling. And we have really good research on biodegradable materials and circular design of fishing gears. Concerning energy efficiency, I think this is one of the key factors to achieve the goals within the Green Deal. And we are glad to observe that according to STCF, the scientific body working for the European Commission, in the last decade, we see a reduction of 18% of fuel consumption and CO2 emissions. And as presented yesterday in another intergroup event, we see that according to the figures reported to the Protocol of Kyoto, the fishing sector in Europe has reduced its emissions by almost 50% if we compare the figures from figures from 1990. So this progress is mainly due to the improvement of fish stocks, innovation, and the reduction of the fishing fleet. But obviously, we're facing a number of challenges. Cannot be all good news. The first problem is that many assimilate innovation and efficiency with overfishing. So we really need to find a common approach of where we want to go. And we need to bear in mind that our fishing fleet is on average 25 years old. The second problem that we see, and it was also discussed yesterday in this intergroup event, is that many vessel innovations, they require more space on board. And we are referring not only to new propulsion technologies, but also to the improvement of working and living conditions on board, the improvement of hydrodynamics and stability of fishing vessels, as well as onboard processing. So the progress in these areas are in many cases jeopardized by the fishing capacity limits that we have in the European Union, which considers spaces for accommodation, recreation, toilets, kitchen as fishing capacity. And I don't think they should be identified as such. So we need to find really new alternatives and formulas. And finally, some food for thought. The European Union has set a really ambitious environmental roadmap under the Green Deal, the biodiversity, and the farm to fork strategies that can only be achieved through innovation. And in this context, I would like to mention the European Fisheries Platform technology, which was set up back in 2010. This association brought together more than 90 entities from the whole fisheries value chain, the catching, processing, and commercialization stages, also representatives from academia, research institutes, and observers from the public administration. And they all share a common goal: driving innovation, investigation, and knowledge transfer. But this, for us, these are the very foundations to a real transition from a traditional sector to a competitive, modern, and zero emission sector. But unfortunately, these fisheries platforms stopped functioning due to a lack of recognition and endorsement from the European Commission. So we believe now is the right time to examine the idea to revamp such platform and possibly get the recognition from the European Commission. So I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to provide the feedback and open for any discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Voces, for your intervention. It becomes pretty clear that we all share the same viewpoint and commitment on the fact that sustainable fishing goes hand in hand with research and innovation. Of course, science is equally needed at all stages of fishing, and there's many examples we can be proud of, very much linked with innovation. So thank you very much for highlighting that, and also inter alia the fact that energy efficiency is a key component and parameter with regards to achieving the objectives of the European Green Deal as well. So our next speaker of the day is Mr. Frederick Mire, who is the acting team leader on ocean at WWF Norway. Mr. Mire is a marine biologist from the University of Bergen in Norway, and is also the founder and executive director of Help Havets Higher, an organization that works for better management of the shark populations. Mr. Mire, thank you very much for joining us today, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Elias. I hope the sound is okay. I will share my screen to have a presentation. And first of all, also thank you to the organizers of the event and to Ms. Carvalho and to my fellow speakers. I hope that you see presentation now, and I will put into full screen as well. Let me know if it's not in full screen, and I will make sure to get it in full screen. You should be able to see a spur dog.
Yes, it's all perfect.
Perfect, thanks. So, just to give a backdrop, it has been spoken about quite a bit, but I would just want to emphasize that we are in the middle of the sixth mass extinction of animal life that this planet has ever experienced. The fifth and last that we experienced, that was 65 million years ago when the dinosaur died out, and we are experiencing the loss of animal life in the same kind of tempo these days. Of course, this is both linked to the nature crisis on its own, but also the climate crisis, and timely so with everything that's been said at the COP26 in Glasgow these days. Looking at the numbers, we know that for the general planet, we see that the population size has dropped an alarming 68% just since 1970s. And if we dive into the oceans, we see that the situation isn't that much better in the ocean, even though we have little knowledge of the ocean as such. We only have mapped out approximately between 5 and 10% of the oceans. But still, from the knowledge that we do have these days, we know that it's almost 40% or 36% drop in the marine populations in the same time period. And looking at the commercial fish stocks, we know that 93% of these commercial fish stocks either are fully exploited today or already overfished. And I always get, or I used to get challenged by especially the fishing industry, that you can't really use the numbers for the ones that are fully exploited, because that's maybe the level that we are to have. But at the same time, when everybody's pointing fingers towards the oceans, is stating that the solutions for the future are in the oceans, and I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, we cannot harvest from the commercial fish species at a higher rate due to the fact that they are more or less all fully exploited or overfished already. And looking at what's needed for the future, and I will go into the technology in just a few minutes, but just also as a backdrop, and Annette Hurelman was mentioning quite a bit about this, about the ecosystem-based management. Where we are today, we have more or less in the most advanced fisheries nations, we do still have single stock species when we manage our fish stocks. We don't have the knowledge about how the different species interactions are, how the different species and habitat interactions are. And without that, we also have quite a little knowledge of how the human impacts are, other than that they are quite significant for quite a few of the species, as I've provided the numbers for already, both for the ocean and the planet. And going forward, we need to solve some of the problems, and technology will do that. We need to have fishing technology in the future going forward that will contribute to solving the issues of having this filling the knowledge gap on multiple species models for the fisheries management to have better management systems in place. We need to reduce the bycatch problems with mitigating measures with new kind of technologies in order to solve the bycatch problems. And also an elephant in the room is the climate footprint of fisheries. Yes, it's one of the animal proteins with a less with a minimum footprint on the climate perspective today, but at the same time, all sectors towards 2050, if we are to reach the 1.5 degree target in the Paris Agreement, needs to be at carbon neutrality. So all the fishery sector also needs to be climate neutral. And talking about bottom trawling, we need also that the fisheries management in the future take into account the new science that is coming to the surface, and especially for the bottom trawling with the interesting study from Emily Salah and the 26 scientists in the paper from the National Geographic that was published in Nature in March this year, looking at how bottom trawling is also stirring up the sediments and the carbon storage on the ocean floor at quite an alarming effect for the oceans, contributing that this carbon, when it mixed with the seawater, gives a more acid ocean, and that, of course, a more acid ocean is not that well in taking up CO2 emissions from the atmosphere. So this also has to be taken into account going forward when we talk about what kind of fisheries technology that we need for the future. So for the bottom trawling, it's not only about the environment that is at the bottom. It's not only about the bycatch. It's not only about the emissions from trawling, but it's from the ships. But it's also about what kind of carbon footprint does the fishing method has on the natural carbon storage at the ocean floor. And just to drop some numbers on this study, just to put it in a Norwegian context, since I'm from the Norwegian office at WWF, looking at the numbers. Just for the Norwegian fishing fleet and the bottom trawling that we have in national waters, it's actually the carbon stir up is equal to both the carbon emissions from Norwegian industry, from the road traffic nationally, and the inland air traffic. And if we are to report on these climate emissions, Norway would actually have to report on 50% increase of carbon emissions. So these numbers are quite significant. Yes, it's a new study. It's not that well dug into yet, but at the same time, the numbers are so alarming that we need to make sure that we have the science going forward and that we have technology that actually will reduce this kind of carbon footprint as well. And another area that's it's arising is that as more people and more industries point their fingers out to the ocean for solutions, there will also be an increase of conflict between sectors and, of course, conflict between humans and nature. And in this, we need to see that it's easy to say that all activities and all nature can be put on the same map, but it's all activities cannot fit into the same oceans. And of course, marine spatial planning, ecosystem-based management is an absolute key in this. And I do think that technology has a huge role to play here, because talking about, for instance, windmill parks, that traditional fishing methods these days cannot go into. For instance, these areas that you have purseine or bottom trawling. Maybe the use of fish traps can actually fish inside these kind of windmill parks, and then thereby you can have a better integrated marine spatial planning, making sure that you can also harvest within windmill parks, for instance, and then thereby reducing the conflict level in the discussions of what kind of ocean do we need going forward. And one crucial part also to lift that is, I do think that if we are to have a dialogue that's not based on conflicts, we need to have a common set of rules when it comes to taking care of nature values in the ocean. In Norway, we have this cross-sectoral law called the Nature Diversity Act, and still in Norwegian waters, that's not don't apply for all sectors, and it doesn't apply outside the 12 nautical mile zone. So basically, you have no common set of rules out, or the possibilities of a common set of rules outside 12 nautical mile zone and all the way out to 200 nautical mile zone. And that's one of the issues creating a lot of tensions between activities, because they feel that it's unfair how the different sectors are treated when it comes to nature values. So technology could also provide solutions for that as well. And as Innomar also lifted in their presentation, it's also about the fishing gear and having the active monitoring systems in place on the fishing gear, that you can always look into what kind of catches do you have, and especially if that you can easily identify and locate if you're losing fishing gear. And also, of course, with if you have a demand for, or if you have a mandatory rule for everybody to have the same kind of rules, that you need to have a system that can monitor fishing gear, that can locate lost fishing gear, or also then investigate if gears is being reported when it's being lost. You can also then make sure that you can reduce the amount of ghost gears in the waters. And also technology like this could also be adopted into a deposit scheme for fishing gear, that you actually create this understanding of that you borrow some of the fishing gear from the producers, and when you are finished with it, you actually get some money back. And by that kind of deposit scheme, you can actually also reduce the amount of plastic waste and the fishing gear doing harm to the ocean that we all depend on, and basically that we all are really interested in taking care of, nevertheless, what kind of sector we are from. And talking about big data, also technology has a huge importance in the big data, and especially learning from failure and success, sharing the information and results, sharing the knowledge of technology, making sure that we have established a best practice for others to follow, and also best practice technologies that we can easily try to implement other places in the world that also needs to reduce the environmental impacts from the fisheries, and of course also contribute to a stronger knowledge platform and a better management regime ultimately that the oceans needs. So to sum up, some of the questions will be: can better technology increase the traceability and transparency, increase the data sharing, reduce overfishing, increase ocean health, and also give more sustainable coastal state agreements? We believe that it absolutely can, but of course it's also really important to emphasize that technology cannot solve overfishing alone, and we need to make sure that the decision makers of the world actually follows the scientific advices that are for the different fish stocks. We cannot end up in situations that we have even here in the Northeast Atlantic with a mackerel or with a herring or with a blue whiting. We need to have management systems that actually follow the scientific advice, because the technology alone will not save us. And in that, we have to make sure that we have systems of change that are beneficial to all sentient beings and to the environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amire, for your presentation, which sums up the interventions of speakers during today's online event. At this stage, I would like to let you know that due to an unforeseen circumstance in the agenda of the MEP, Ms. Maria Carvalho, linked with the legislative work of the MEP, Ms. Carvalho will not be able to stay for the whole duration of our event, so she sends her sincere apologies for this development. At this stage, I think that we can take some questions from the audience. So looking at the chat box, I would like to turn to Mr. Roisland. And this is a question linked very much with data. This is something that data collection and scientific evidence, it's a key component that came up during the discussions today. So Mr. Roisland, ocean data is a big topic, of course. How do you see your technology contributing to this topic?
Well, first and foremost, our system can already give full overview of the users of our buoys, and when connected to the transducers, you could also get access to subsea data. We're already working on prototypes of how we can equip these buoys with additional sets of sensors that are not necessarily of first-hand value to the user, that is the fisherman, but let's say you could monitor algae levels, salinity, temperature, oxygen level. There would be other stakeholders that would be interested in this. For example, aquaculture fish farms that see algae coming to their facilities as a potential risk. There could be oxygen level and temperature levels that we could report into researchers and other stakeholders, and of course subsea connectivity and other sort of networks connected to this ocean IoT. We are just on a breaking point to big revolution here in what we can do with IoT deployed in the ocean. And of course, you could bridge sort of or help connect the cooperation between the industry and regulators and other stakeholders with this data, so that we can all work together to make fishing more sustainable in this sector, but also to get other valuable data that can be used for other measures in the blue economy.
Thank you very much, David. And the next question would be to Captain Orton, who also mentioned within his presentation that fishing with the technology presented today is an opportunity to optimize quality, to reduce operational costs, bycatch and ghost fishing. But how would you see the future ahead?
Well, I see the future for coastal fishing moving forward to a more sustainable and quality-based ways of fishing, and I think we are on that path now. There's more and more fishermen that go from fishing with gill nets to longline because we're starting to develop a better paying market and more focus from the customers on quality and sustainability. So I think that it's very, very likely that we will be continuing and having a growth in the speed of this development. And also, I think we'll see that the bigger boats will also come after with regards to trawling. It might take a while because it's expensive boats. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Orton. And I would also like to encourage our speakers to also interact, perhaps with regards to some of the presentations and comments received during the duration of the event. So turning to Daniel, I would also like to pose more or less a similar question, because Daniel, you also mentioned, I've noted down that innovation and efficiency are, of course, key, and we can actually be proud of many examples, but we also need to find a common approach of where we want to go. So on behalf of Europesh, what is your vision then looking ahead?
From the sector, I think it's our responsibility to invest in developing new technologies that is allowing us to mitigate our impact in the marine environment. As any other sector, as any other economic activity, we will have an impact. We are human beings and we are on Earth, and everything that we do is going to have an impact on the environment. What we are trying to do, we will have to try to do, is to regulate, manage, and mitigate as far as possible this impact. We've been talking about technologies during the whole of the event, from the engine, the fishing gear, the hydrodynamics of the vessel, whether our fishing gear is more efficient than the others. But the thing is that any fishing gear or any fishing vessel, they will have, or they will face different problems. We cannot really say that this is the one best and we should all have the same gear, because if that was the case, then everybody would be doing the same thing. Then I think also from regulators, they also have a duty or a task to do, that is to making sure that the legislative framework is suited for introducing these technologies. And it is really appreciated, all the support from the European Commission and the member states to move towards more environmentally friendly fishing techniques. But also we need a legislative framework to allow for this innovation, and that's where I referred before to capacity ceilings in the European Union that we don't see, for instance, in many other countries around the world. And concerning, I heard about the cameras, and it's true. Some of our members are already investing and developing these technologies. We have a good example, for instance, in the tuna fishing industry, where on a voluntary basis in their operations around the world, they have installed cameras, and I think it's really good data. The problem is that in the revision of the control regulation, that was not the goal of this new technology. The goal was to check whether or not the landing obligation was being implemented and applied in European vessels, and the idea was not originally the benefit for fisheries management. So perhaps we can see a different approach now from the European Commission on that side. And concerning the presentations from my colleagues and panelists, I still see the mixing of sustainable fishing with overfishing, and I think this is something that it was already agreed by all the stakeholders, that we cannot, same as we cannot mix sustainable with unsustainable, we cannot mix legal with illegal. I think they are opposites in themselves. So I would really appreciate when we talk about this that there's no this mixing, because FAO is telling us that almost 80% of the fish that we are consuming is coming from sustainable sources. So hearing that 93% of the fish stocks are either overfished or sustainable fished is really confusing for everyone. So I would appreciate that that these two terms are not mixed, because it's really consuming and it's really frustrating what we're doing in the fishing industry. And comparing the trawling with aviation, well, it looks like it's huge, the impact of trawling when you do that. But how many planes do we have in the world operating? I think it's around 20,000, 30,000. And if that is the whole environmental footprint of all the trawlings in the world, all the trawlers in the world, I think that we're doing pretty good, to be honest. So, well, that's a little bit food for thought concerning the presentations. Obviously, I don't have all the answers, and we can be perfectly criticized, but I think the data should be showcased in the right manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Voces. Saying that also we're getting very close to wrapping up, I would like to pose one or two more questions received by our audience. So for Mr. van der Becken, perhaps there is a question. I'm going to read it out for you. Is there a market for a wider variety of high-quality, sustainably caught fresh fish in the retail and HoReCa segment?
Yes, they are looking for diversity. They are kind of pissed off always having the same fish on the counters. So they want different species with sustainability, of course, but different species. Yeah, like we speak tusk. Today we are not processing tusk at all, but I'm sure it will be, and it has to be in the shops. And to reach the HoReCa and the retails, we need volumes, because we cannot just provide like a few boxes. It's like if you want to reach HoReCa services, I mean, in an industrial way, to launch something, it's minimum 10 tons per week. And if you want to reach retail with individual packaging, it's between 30 and 40 tons of raw material per week. So I'm sure you can fish that, and the retailers are looking forward to get some sustainability fish and different species than that they are used to.
Thank you very much, Mr. van der Becken. And I see that Mr. Googler is also connected. I thought that there was a problem with your connection earlier on, because we've just received another question from the audience worth addressing, and this is on is the fishing method important to the quality of fish?
Absolutely, it's very, very important, as I also emphasized before when I spoke. The kind of fishing, whatever goes through the method, definitely creates a lot of stress, a lot of adrenaline to the fish. And this is the same like with other livestock. So we have to make sure that we are really taking the utmost care and taking the most sensitive way in getting the fishes actually on the table, I would say. Not only into the catching, into the fishes, into the boats. No, we have to make sure that everything goes well, actually, from the beginning of the process to the end. And I'm 100% sure about that. I mean, if we are taking the utmost care, like with the system, like from Innomar, I think all of that would have been captured into one capsule and it would go from A to Z in a perfect way. I think it's really amazing. And we as culinarians would be very, very happy in having the best quality of fish constantly on our in our kitchens and on our plates, actually, to satisfy and to please our customers.
So then, as we're wrapping up today's discussions, what would be, this is an open question addressed to all speakers, what would be then, maybe in 2 or 3 sentences, what are your key takeaways of today's discussion, and what would you like our audience to take home today? Perhaps we can start following the sequence of the event with David and Oystein.
From my perspective, I would like to emphasize that, you know, the industry cooperating with regulators and other stakeholders, and using technology to bridge that cooperation and use innovation to increase the value of the resources that you extract from the ocean, whilst maintaining good ecosystems, is the way forward. From our perspective, of course, we are one of many players and we offer one tool in the toolbox. And there's other players there as well that have other tools, as DG Mare mentioned. And of course, they have their views and methods as well. And then he also mentioned, of course, they do innovation there as well. So on a grand scheme, I think you should consider all the stakeholders and all the players, but technology and cooperation between all the stakeholders is the way to make this all happen.
Thank you very much. Perhaps Mr. Orton, any follow-up comment?
Yeah, I think that we need to make this move towards more sustainable fishing methods now, and the way to do that is to develop profitable ways of fishing that you can get those results. There's no other way that the fishermen like myself and all the others will be willing to change their ways of doing things. So there has to be an alternative, like the green change and starting to go to other sources of fuel and that stuff. We need to have profitable or sustainable ways of doing it before the legislation comes. We can't have the legislation before we have the new possibilities. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I'm well aware of the fact that for the final part of today's discussions, we haven't heard much from the representatives from the European Commission. I'm very sorry for that. So perhaps now this is the occasion for you to address us your key takeaways of the panel discussion. Now, Ms. Balzi or Ms. Harelman, feel free to take the floor.
Thank you. So I think this was a very, very interesting discussion, which shows how important it is to work all together. So for us, we are concentrating on our side on research and innovation, but even in our areas, you see that the initiatives now go far beyond research and innovation. So research and innovation is needed to have a more sustainable fisheries, but also to contribute in general to healthy oceans and a healthy planet. But we need to go beyond that. We need to work all together across the different sectors. I think you have shown today that, for example, that the SMEs, they have a wonderful, very important role. Also the fisher sectors, to the consumers. And so we are looking forward to engage all together. And the mission is an opportunity just to do that. Including I would like to say, including the importance of the youth. We are, for example, supporting youth ambassadors for the ocean, and they are very powerful. And so the engagement of the society at large is key. And of course, this needs to be complemented with science and technologies, including particularly the digital. We are working very much at the digital twin of the ocean, and that's also key aspects. But not as technology by themselves, but then to serve society and to reach the goals our societal goals, which is now we have an urgency really to restore the oceans by 2030, and that is a very ambitious goal that we have to reach all together.
Thank you very much, and perhaps Ms. Halman.
Yes, thank you. If I can follow up directly on that. So for me, a very clear takeaway from the discussion and the presentations today is that we need to keep developing the science and the data for fisheries management, and in particular for understanding better the impact that fisheries has on the wider ecosystems. I completely agree with Elisabetta that it is very clear from such discussions as today that we need to cooperate across different sectors and actors and different opinions and different ways of coming to the issue and to the problem. What I also found very interesting is that our discussion in particular has also shown how important it is to have a very open dialogue about how we actually interpret the data and the science and the methods. And I think especially with the idea of moving to a much more complex and much more complicated ecosystem-based consideration for managing fisheries, I think that is a very, very important consideration to keep in mind. And the more complex the framework is that we work with, the more the danger is also there that it's vague and everybody is going to interpret it in very different ways. And in many ways, I think that's the success story of the measure that we currently mainly use, the maximum sustainable yield, because that at least gives a figure that still can be interpreted in somewhat different ways, but at least it gives a figure. So I think looking forward, there's really a lot of thinking and a lot of work that has to be done to not only develop the data and the science, but also to develop our common understanding and our dialogue about what this actually then means in terms of how we should manage fisheries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Halman. And is there perhaps any other speaker that would like to step in at this stage? Yes,
I would like to say one thing at the end from the chef side or from the culinarian side. I would like to say about one thing which is for me and for all my colleagues very, very important. I would always just say that in a very simple sentence: think out of the box, an extra mile, set an example, be a leader, help the planet, make the world a better place. I think this covers everything which we as human beings should think of. I think it's a fantastic and a great vision what you all have. And I think, as we always say, together we can make it, together we'll shine. And I take the opportunity in thanking you all for being here today for this very, very great webinar. And I'm looking forward, as I said, to make that happen, what we talked today about. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I noted, Frederick, that you also wanted the floor.
Yes, please. Thanks. I think the key takeaways has been mentioned quite a lot, but I want to emphasize that listen to the scientific advices that's are out there for the oceans, and we need to have develop technologies that actually can strengthen the science and also reduce the two things that we are facing: the nature crisis and the climate crisis. And we have to make sure to have parallel thoughts, two thoughts in the head at the same time. They are equal the size. They are two sides of the same story. We need to tackle them both. And in that, the FAO numbers for the fisheries, when we look at the state of the world's fisheries and aquaculture that comes out every year, it states quite clearly that 93% of the fish stocks is fully exploited or overfished. 33% is overfished already globally. That's the FAO numbers. They are there. And the Paris Agreement has these commitments in them. Everybody has to contribute in order to make sure that the climate footprint comes to a net zero by 2050 if we are to tackle the climate crisis and keep our planet within the planetary boundaries. So time for talk is over. We need clear actions going forward.
Thank you very much, Frederick. Of course, it's very important. Innovation is the key word, I think, today, and it's equally important to respect and make sure that we're moving towards achieving our climate and biodiversity targets. At the same time, recognizing the key role of innovation, it's equally important in respect to the Sustainable Development Goals to also stick to the SDGs goal of feeding a growing population. I would like to just provide the floor. It's only Xavier and Daniel that we didn't hear from. So maybe it's an opportunity for you to deliver your key takeaway messages for today's event.
Yes, I think like it was told before, the two key points is technology and people. And we need, I say again, the chief to help us to promote these species, which are not well known today, but are very good because they are proteins. They are good proteins, and with good fishermen, good people processing, we can provide amazing food to the people. So we need to speak together. Communication is the key, even if there is data and data and data, but communication is the key. So we need to communicate, and I'm happy that I was invited today, and I can understand a lot of things, the fishing industry and on all the supply chains.
Thank you very much, and perhaps Daniel.
Yeah, thank you, Elias. I fully agree with what the concluding remarks from all the panelists. And I see that technology alone is not going to work, or environmental targets alone are not going to work. We hear to the fishermen that we also need an economic driver for fishermen to move forward. And I would actually include a social driver, like the population. So it's very important to make sure that there's a benefit for all these three factors of sustainability. We also need the willingness from governments to move in this direction. I think the case of the mackerel was presented by two of the speakers. Obviously, it doesn't matter how hard the European Union, for instance, wants to sustainably manage the mackerel, but if the northern countries, they decide to hugely increase the quota without taking consideration of the stock, then we have a problem. And here is my last point. This is connecting with my last point. We need a level playing field. We need all the actors playing by the same rules and respecting the same rules. If this is not happening, if there's like only a few countries signing up for the commitments, then we will not have a solution globally. We will make some efforts in different regions, but then it will not work. And when I listen to these statistics and figures globally, then when we look in detail what is going on, we see that there are certain oceans and seas that are heavily impacted, and those are the ones not managed properly. So well, I think that really need to set a high standard for everyone and make sure that all the goals are reached. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bothes. And I just noticed that Ms. Balci, you have raised virtually your hand. Is there perhaps a final remark from your side?
Yes. Thank you. I just wanted to thank again your intergroup on climate change, biodiversity and sustainable development for having organized this discussion. I think it's really key to have these dialogues, and the role of the European Parliament is key in this respect. So I would like to call again to join forces. You have a key role to mobilize the citizens in the member states, in the regions, in the local places where it really happens, and also where our missions can happen and be implemented. And I wanted also to mention that also the international context is very important. And for example, the UN Decade of the Oceans is very important. And there we also have an important role to play together. And just to mention, for example, in June, there will be a very important event in Portugal, in Lisbon, on UN conference on the ocean. And there again, I think it will be an important moment to mobilize all the stakeholders together. So we're looking forward to collaborate with all of you on that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Balci. And as we're wrapping up today's webinar on addressing achieving sustainability in fisheries through research innovation, I would equally like to thank hosting MEP, Ms. Maria da Graça Carvalho, for hosting the event under the umbrella of the European Parliament Intergroup, also Inomar, for kindly organizing this event. And of course, I'm sure that this event served as a great starting point for more discussion, more opportunities ahead, and closer dialogue with all parties involved. This is something that on behalf of the European Parliament Intergroup we really stand for. I hope this can also result in further projects and concrete actions, as research innovation have indeed a great role and a key potential to play when it comes to sustainable fisheries. I think this is a key takeaway message of today's event. So on this note, I would like to extend the warm thanks to all of our speakers, but also to dear viewers for their active engagement. As on behalf of the Secretariat of the Intergroup, I'm very much looking forward to continuing the debate in the future. So until then, stay safe and see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.